morning, good afternoon, good evening. The opposition leaders, the MDC, Triple C, are all gearing and preparing the nation to fight to defend the Constitution. This is a result of the opposition, the response to Zanu PF ED 2030 agenda. The people of Zimbabwe have to be smarter. They have to realize that the country is in this mess because the opposition themselves have sold out. It is all very well the likes of Senator Jameson Timba to be coming up with Zimbabwe's progress will not be built by billionaires defending power, but by citizens defending their constitution. The people have got to ask, Senator, what democratic change has the MDC Triple C brought in these last 25 years, including the 5 years in the GNU when you had the golden opportunity to do so? You are the ones who are supposed to have brought about the change. Why have you not done so? Why do you keep on telling us that you're going to bring change? And 25 years later, there is not even a single democratic change you can put before the nation and say, yes, we brought you this. This is the work of our 25 years. The people of Zimbabwe have got to be a lot smarter. We have had so many promises from the opposition, and none of those promises have ever came to anything. People will remember this. When Chamisa and our senator here called the people to participate in the 2023 elections, promising that ED has no room for rigging. Chamisa himself is on record claiming that change was so certain, hashtag God is in it, he even invoked the name of God. He was preparing his cabinet.
Makorokoto Zimbabwe, nokuti hakuna munhu anomira kana denga raronga plan. Denga raronga plan, denga harifoiri. Plan ya Mwari haifoiri. Ini ndatanga kugadzira cabinet. There is no way we are not going to form a new cabinet. There is no way we are not going to have a celebration. There is no way we are not going to have an inauguration. Let's start preparing for our inauguration. Let's start preparing for our celebration.
What went wrong? I'll tell you. He was lying. He was lying that he had plugged all the vote rigging loopholes to stop Zanu PF rigging the elections. That was a lie. And it was a deliberate and calculated lie. He knew people would believe him and would participate in the flawed elections. He also knew that by participating, they'll give Zanu PF legitimacy and perpetuate the dictatorship. This has been at the heart of our problem. The people of Zimbabwe, by the late 1990s, realized that as long as Zanu PF is able to rig elections, there will be no meaningful change in the country. And so the nation made a conscientious decision that we must elect opposition leaders whose number one task would be to implement the necessary democratic changes to stop Zanu PF rigging elections. That was the primary purpose. And when Morgan Tsvangirai and his friends formed their party, they named it the Movement for Democratic Change, promising to deliver those democratic changes. And yet, as I said, 25 years later, Zanu PF is able to blatantly rig elections precisely because the opposition have not implemented any reforms. The opposition, when they failed to implement the reforms when they had the best chance to do so during the GNU, they decided to abandon reforms and started talking about winning rigged elections. They claimed they had strategies of how to win rigged elections. And so since 2013, the nation has been dragged into this nonsensical situation where we participate in flawed elections because we believe we can win the rigged elections. This has been at the heart of our problem. This is just nonsense. We need to implement the democratic reforms that will guarantee all the citizens their right to a meaningful say in the governance of the country. That should be the job. And if the MDC and CCC leaders have not sold out, this should have been done a long time ago. We should not even be talking about this problem anymore. And yet, here we are. What is more, until we carry out this task, we'll be talking about participating in flawed elections to give Zanu PF legitimacy in 2028. In other words, as much as Senator Timba and his colleagues would want us to believe that the fight before this nation is to stop ED tampering with the Constitution to extend his rule, that is only a side issue. And what is more, irrelevant one. I'll tell you why. If we focus on implementing reforms so that elections in 2028 are free, fair, and credible. Zanu PF will never win those elections. Mnangagwa knows it. Everyone in Zanu PF knows it. Because if they cannot rig the elections, they cannot win them. And this Zanu PF dictatorship survival depends on rigging 2028 elections. So if you stopped them rigging the elections, the Zanu PF dictatorship will die. Because Zanu PF dictatorship, as we know it, cannot win free, fair, and credible elections. And so we have a situation here where in 2023, both SADC and the AU condemned Zimbabwe's elections as flawed and illegal. The most rational thing that we should be focusing on, and our friend Timba and his friends should be focusing on, is making sure that 2028 is not a repeat of 2023. We should make sure 2028 we have the reforms implemented. But of course, Timba and company are not interested in that. They're now moving on to stopping ED 2030 agenda, as if that is the single most important thing. If we participate in 2028 with no reforms implemented and participate in the same numbers as we participated in 2023, then SADC and the AU will condemn the elections as flawed and illegitimate, but they will not deny Zanu PF legitimacy because we participated. So the dictatorship will survive. And as long as the dictatorship has survived, if Mnangagwa manages to tamper with the constitution so that he can stay on until 2030, as long as he's got the dictatorship, he can do that. Even if Mnangagwa should fail to do that, as long as Zanu PF is able to rig 2028 elections, they will have their own candidate in those elections, a new dictator, and will not be able to stop him or her. But if we were to refuse to participate in those flawed elections, SADC and the AU will do what they did in 2008, deny Zanu PF legitimacy. And the country will be forced into a second GNU. And there is no doubt that even if Mnangagwa had managed before the 2028 elections to extend his own stay in power beyond 2028, if SADC and the AU deny the Zanu PF dictatorship legitimacy and force the country to go into another GNU, there is no way Mnangagwa can force himself onto the GNU and be president. There's no way. The political crisis would have been caused by Zanu PF and he himself at the heart of it. And he cannot impose himself on the GNU. What we have got to understand here is that dictators cannot survive without the dictatorship. They are like fish. Fish cannot survive out of water. For the dictator, the dictatorship is the water. So stop the dictatorship and you'll have ended any dictator who was either in the pipeline or had imposed himself. They cannot survive without the dictatorship. So why are we not focusing, therefore, on making sure that we dismantle the dictatorship? The reason for that is very simple and very clear. Whether we like to admit it or not, Senator Jameson Timba and his friends are not interested in dismantling the dictatorship. Because if they were, they would have done it by now. All they are interested in is participating in the flawed process for their share of the spoils of power. And meanwhile, make a big song and dance of how they are defending the Constitution. They're fighting in our corner, when in reality, they've long ago stopped doing that. The people of Zimbabwe must be smarter. They've got to realize that the opposition, the MDC-CCC, were elected for the primary purpose of implementing democratic changes to end the Zanu PF dictatorship. And all these MDC-CCC leaders have done this last 25 years is make a big song and dance of fighting the individual dictator when they know that is irrelevant. Because as long as the dictatorship is there, you will always have another dictator. We need to send a clear message to the opposition that we are not interested in fighting to stop or to swap one dictator for another. We want to dismantle the dictatorship itself. And the only way we can do it in 2028 is stopping these MDC people, CCC people, calling people to participate in flawed elections to perpetuate the dictatorship and perpetuate our own suffering. Think about it. Thank you very much. Have a good afternoon.